I turned 50 last Tuesday, and my boss Marcus said, "Time to make room for fresh mood," as he handed me my termination papers. I smiled and thanked him for the opportunity, hiding my cold anger behind a mask of professional grace. But when I walked into his office 24 hours later, he was on his knees begging for mercy. You won't believe what I did to turn the tables so completely. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The conference room smelled of stale coffee and broken dreams when Marcus called me in that Tuesday morning. I just finished celebrating my 50th birthday the night before. A quiet dinner at home with my wife Sandra, nothing fancy, just grateful for another year of life and 28 years of dedicated service to Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. "Robert, take a seat," Marcus said, his voice carrying that particular tone managers use when they're about to destroy someone's life. At 35, he was 15 years younger than me, with the kind of aggressive confidence that comes from never having faced real adversity. I settled into the chair across from his glass desk, noting the termination paperwork already laid out like a death sentence. The irony wasn't lost on me. Being fired the day after my birthday. "I'll get straight to the point," Marcus continued, adjusting his expensive tie. "The company is restructuring. We need to bring in younger talent, people who understand digital marketing, social media, the modern landscape." 28 years, I said quietly, more to myself than to him. I've given this company 28 years. And we appreciate that, we really do. His words carried about as much sincerity as a politician's campaign promise. But it's time to make room for fresh blood. Nothing personal, just business evolution. Fresh blood. As if my experience, my relationships with every major client, my institutional knowledge was somehow rotten meat that needed discarding. What about the Morrison account? I asked, thinking of the $2.3 million client I'd personally landed and managed for 12 years. The Henderson Group contract I negotiated last month? Marcus waved dismissively. We'll transition those relationships to younger team members, people who speak the language of modern commerce. The language of modern commerce. I almost laughed. Marcus had been with the company for 3 years. I'd been building relationships and landing major contracts when he was still learning to drive. "Of course," I said, maintaining my composure. "I understand completely." His eyebrows lifted slightly, perhaps surprised by my calm acceptance. Most people probably fought back, argued, pleaded for their jobs. But I'd learned something in 5 decades of life that Marcus hadn't. Sometimes the best response to betrayal is patience. "Your final day is today," he continued, sliding the termination papers across his desk. "HR will handle the exit interview and final paperwork. Security will escort you out after you clean out your office." Security escort. For a man who'd never missed a deadline, never lost a client, never caused a moment's trouble in nearly 3 decades of service. The humiliation was clearly intentional. I signed the papers with steady hands, each signature feeling like an investment in something Marcus couldn't possibly understand. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, meeting his eyes directly. "These 28 years have been very educational." Something in my tone made him shift uncomfortably, but he recovered quickly. "We wish you the best in your future endeavors, Robert. I'm sure someone will appreciate your traditional approach to business." Traditional approach. Another insult wrapped in professional courtesy. As I stood to leave, I noticed the framed photo on his desk. Marcus shaking hands with David Chen, the CEO of Pacific Industries, our biggest potential client. They'd been courting that account for 8 months without success. "Good luck with the Pacific Industries pitch next week," I said casually. "I know how much that contract means to the company's quarterly projections." Marcus's confident smile faltered for just a moment. "We'll be fine. The proposal is solid." I nodded thoughtfully. "I'm sure it is. David Chen is particular about his partnerships, but I'm certain your team has done thorough research on his preferences and business philosophy." The slight confusion in Marcus's eyes told me everything I needed to know. They'd prepared a standard pitch without understanding their client. Typical. "Well," I said, heading toward the door, "I should go clean out my office. Wouldn't want to keep security waiting." "My office, former office. looked smaller somehow as I packed 28 years of professional life into cardboard boxes. Awards, client photos, the brass nameplate Sandra had given me for our 10th anniversary. Each item felt like evidence of a career that Marcus had just declared worthless. Jennifer from HR appeared in the doorway with 2 security guards, their presence designed to make me feel like a criminal rather than a terminated employee. "Sorry about this, Robert," Jennifer said, her discomfort obvious. She'd started as an intern 15 years ago, and I'd mentored her through her early career challenges. "It's just company policy for executive departures." "Of course," I replied, taping the last box closed. "Just following procedures." The walk through the office was designed for maximum humiliation. My former colleagues watched with the morbid fascination people show when passing car accidents. Some offered sympathetic nods, others looked away, unwilling to make eye contact with a man who'd just been discarded like outdated office equipment. "Rough break," whispered Tom Morrison from accounting as I passed his desk. "Everyone knows you built half these client relationships personally." I paused, remembering something important. "Tom, do me a favor. If anyone asks about the Pacific Industries file, remind them that David Chen's company philosophy emphasizes long-term partnership stability and generational business wisdom. They'll know what I mean." Tom nodded, though he looked puzzled. He'd understand soon enough. The elevator ride down felt like descending into exile. Jennifer made awkward conversation about transition assistance and Cobra health benefits, but I barely listened. My mind was already working through possibilities, calculating resources, planning next moves. "You'll land on your feet, Robert," one of the security guards said as we reached the lobby. "Experienced guy like you, someone will snatch you up quick." I smiled, thinking about Sandra's reaction when I told her about David Chen's personal phone call last month. The conversation Marcus knew nothing about. The opportunity my traditional approach to business had quietly cultivated while younger. More modern colleagues focused on flashy presentations and social media metrics. "I appreciate the confidence," I said, shaking his hand. "Things have a way of working out exactly as they should." Outside, the afternoon sun felt warmer than it had in years. I loaded my boxes into my car and sat for a moment in the parking lot, looking up at the 20th floor where Marcus was probably already celebrating his cost-cutting victory. 24 hours, I thought, pulling out my phone. That's how long it would take for Marcus to understand the difference between fresh blood and fresh stupidity. The drive home gave me time to process what had just happened, but more importantly, time to plan what would happen next. Sandra was waiting in the kitchen when I walked in, her face immediately showing concern at my early arrival and the boxes in my arms. "They let you go," she said, not really a question. She'd sensed this possibility for weeks as Marcus had begun systematically excluding me from meetings and decision-making processes. I set the boxes down and pulled her into a gentle hug. Marcus decided the company needed fresh blood instead of old-fashioned experience. That arrogant little, Sandra caught herself, knowing I preferred to handle workplace conflicts with strategic patience rather than emotional outbursts. "What are you going to do?" I walked to our home office and opened the filing cabinet where I kept personal business documents separate from company files. The manila folder I retrieved was labeled Pacific Industries, Personal Consultation. "Remember David Chen?" I asked, spreading documents across our kitchen table. "The CEO we met at the Rotary Club fundraiser last month?" Sandra's eyes widened as she recognized the letterhead. "The one Marcus has been trying to land for months?" 8 months, actually. David called me personally 3 weeks ago. Pinnacle's pitch wasn't meeting his company's cultural values. Too focused on quick wins and social media buzz, not enough emphasis on sustainable partnership and proven reliability. The documents told a story Marcus had no idea existed. David Chen valued businesses that understood generational thinking, long-term relationship building, and what he called wisdom-based strategy. Exactly the approach Marcus had dismissed as outdated. "He offered me a consulting position," I continued, showing Sandra the contract David had sent. "Independent consultant for Pacific Industries marketing partnerships, helping them identify agencies that share their values and can deliver sustainable results rather than flashy short-term campaigns." Sandra studied the numbers with growing amazement. "Robert, This pays more than your Pinnacle salary. And it's just part-time consulting work. David believes in paying for experience and wisdom. He's specifically looking for someone who can help Pacific Industries avoid agencies that prioritize trendy approaches over proven results. The beautiful irony was that David Chen had been testing Pinnacle marketing solutions for months, watching how they handled relationship building, how they approached business development, how they treated their experienced employees. Marcus's focus on fresh blood and modern approaches had failed every one of David's cultural compatibility tests. "When do you start?" Sandra asked. I glanced at the calendar on our refrigerator. Wednesday, October 12th. Marcus's Pacific Industries presentation was scheduled for Thursday, October 13th. "I start tomorrow morning," I said, already drafting the email I'd send to David Chen tonight. "And my first consultation will be evaluating marketing agencies that are pitching Pacific Industries this week." Sandra began laughing, the kind of deep, satisfying laughter that comes from watching justice align perfectly with irony. "Marcus has no idea, does he? Marcus has no idea about a lot of things. By tomorrow afternoon, he'll start getting educated." That evening, I composed a careful email to David Chen, accepting his consulting offer and confirming my availability to attend Thursday's agency presentations as an independent evaluator. I mentioned my recent separation from Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, noting that this eliminated any potential conflict of interest in assessing their proposal objectively. David's response arrived within an hour. "Perfect timing, Robert. I look forward to your professional assessment of their presentation. Based on our previous conversations about sustainable partnership values, I suspect you'll find their approach illuminating." I fell asleep that night with the deep satisfaction of a man who had just transformed betrayal into opportunity, personal humiliation into professional advantage, and Marcus's fresh blood philosophy into the weapon of his own destruction. Wednesday morning brought the kind of clarity that only comes from having your life stripped down to essentials and rebuilt on more solid foundations. I dressed in my best suit, not the conservative gray ones I wore to Pinnacle, but the sharp navy blue Sandra had bought me for special occasions. David Chen's office occupied the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river and city skyline. His assistant, Maria, greeted me with the warm professionalism reserved for valued consultants rather than supplicants seeking business. "Mr. Chen is looking forward to discussing the Pacific Industries marketing partnership strategy," she said, leading me through a corridor lined with awards and photographs showing David with various business leaders and community figures. "He's particularly interested in your assessment of cultural compatibility factors." David's office reflected his business philosophy: expensive but not ostentatious, modern but not trendy, everything chosen for quality and longevity rather than immediate impact. He rose from behind his desk as I entered, extending his hand with genuine warmth. "Robert, thank you for accepting the consulting position on such short notice. I trust the transition from Pinnacle wasn't too disruptive." "Actually," I said, settling into the chair across from his desk, "the transition was exactly what I needed. Sometimes forced changes create better opportunities than planned ones." David nodded knowingly. "I found that companies willing to discard experienced talent often reveal their true values in the process. Makes it easier to identify partners who share our long-term thinking." He opened a thick folder containing Pinnacle's proposal documents, marketing materials, and what appeared to be detailed background research on the company's recent decisions and personnel changes. "I assume you're familiar with Pinnacle's approach to this account," David continued. 8 months of presentations focusing on social media engagement, viral marketing campaigns, and rapid brand transformation. I leaned forward, recognizing the opportunity to provide exactly the kind of analysis David had hired me to deliver. Marcus Thompson, their current director, believes modern marketing requires what he calls fresh blood and contemporary approaches. Traditional relationship building is seen as outdated. Interesting philosophy. And how has this fresh blood approach served their existing clients? This was where my 28 years of institutional knowledge became invaluable. The Morrison account, their second largest client, has been expressing concerns about campaign sustainability. The Henderson Group, which I negotiated last month before my departure, specifically requested older, more experienced account management for their high-value contracts. David made notes as I spoke, his expression revealing nothing but professional interest. What would you expect from tomorrow's presentation? Flashy visuals, social media metrics, promises of rapid market penetration and viral engagement. Very little focus on sustained partnership value or long-term strategic alignment with client values. And how do you think such an approach would serve Pacific Industries' 5-year partnership goals? I met his eyes directly. It would be exactly the wrong strategy for a company that values generational thinking and sustainable business relationships. David closed the folder and leaned back in his executive chair. Robert, your assessment confirms my growing concerns about Pinnacle's cultural compatibility with our organization. Would you be available to attend tomorrow's presentation as an independent consultant, helping me evaluate their proposal against our partnership criteria? I'd be honored to provide that assessment. We spent the next hour discussing Pacific Industries' long-term marketing goals, their emphasis on community partnership and sustainable growth, their preference for agencies that shared their values rather than simply chasing trending strategies. Everything Marcus had failed to understand during 8 months of pursuit. As our meeting concluded, David handed me a consulting agreement that formalized my role as Pacific Industries' marketing partnership advisor. The compensation was indeed more than my Pinnacle salary, but more importantly, it positioned me to evaluate every agency that wanted Pacific Industries business, including Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. Tomorrow should be quite educational, David said as we shook hands, for everyone involved. Walking to my car, I felt the deep satisfaction of pieces falling perfectly into place. Marcus had fired me for being outdated and traditional. Within 24 hours, those same qualities had become my greatest professional assets. My phone buzzed with a text message as I reached the parking lot. Marcus, of course. Robert, hope you're doing well. Quick question. Do you remember any specific details about David Chen's business preferences? Tomorrow's presentation is crucial for the company's quarterly targets. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed my response. Good luck tomorrow, Marcus. I'm sure your fresh blood approach will make quite an impression. Tomorrow, Marcus would discover exactly what kind of impression modern marketing made on a CEO who valued traditional business wisdom. And I would be there to watch it happen. Thursday morning arrived with the crisp perfection of justice served cold. I sat in Pacific Industries' executive conference room at 9:45 a.m., positioned as David Chen's independent marketing consultant, reviewing final notes while Marcus and his team prepared their presentation in the lobby below. They're quite confident, David observed, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as Marcus directed his team like a general preparing for battle. 3 junior associates, all under 30, loaded with tablets and presentation equipment. I nodded, recognizing the standard Pinnacle approach, overwhelming visual impact designed to mask shallow strategic thinking. Marcus believes in what he calls contemporary engagement methodology. Lots of metrics, social media integration, viral campaign potential. At 10 o'clock sharp, Maria escorted Marcus and his team into the conference room. Marcus wore his most expensive suit and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had just eliminated his biggest internal competitor. His eyes swept the room, registering David Chen at the head of the table, 2 Pacific Industries executives along the sides, and then me. The color drained from Marcus's face like water from a broken dam. Marcus, David said smoothly, I'd like you to meet Robert Harrison, Pacific Industries consulting advisor for marketing partnerships. He'll be helping us evaluate today's presentation against our strategic partnership criteria. Marcus's mouth opened and closed silently, his confident demeanor collapsing in real time. Behind him, his 3 young associates exchanged confused glances, sensing something had gone terribly wrong but not understanding what. Robert, Marcus finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize you were consulting with Pacific Industries? I completed, maintaining professional calm. Yes, David brought me on board to help assess cultural compatibility between potential partners and Pacific Industries' long-term values. I'm looking forward to your presentation. The next hour unfolded like a masterclass in how not to read your audience. Marcus launched into his prepared pitch with the desperation of someone who knew he was already drowning but couldn't stop swimming toward the bottom. Pacific Industries needs rapid brand transformation, Marcus declared, his PowerPoint slides flashing with neon colors and trending hashtags. Social media dominance, viral engagement, contemporary market penetration strategies that speak to today's consumers. David Chen's expression remained politely neutral, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes that indicated growing concern. Beside him, his executives took notes that would later become the documentation of Pinnacle's complete failure to understand their client. Our fresh blood approach, Marcus continued, clicking to a slide showing dramatic demographic targeting graphics, eliminates outdated relationship building methods in favor of algorithmic engagement optimization. One of David's executives leaned forward. What about long-term partnership sustainability? Our company values generational thinking and stable business relationships. Marcus's junior associate, barely 25 years old, jumped in eagerly. Traditional approaches are dead, sir. Modern consumers want authentic, disruptive, innovative brand experiences that challenge established thinking. The silence that followed was deafening. David Chen had built Pacific Industries over 25 years through exactly the kind of traditional relationship building Marcus had just declared dead. Interesting perspective, David said quietly. Robert, as our consulting advisor, what's your assessment of this strategic approach? I leaned forward, speaking with the calm authority of someone who had spent 3 decades learning what actually worked in business rather than what sounded impressive in presentations. The proposal demonstrates significant misalignment with Pacific Industries' core values. I began, noting how Marcus's confident posture was crumbling with each word. The emphasis on disruption and rapid transformation contradicts your company's philosophy of sustainable partnerships and generational thinking. Marcus tried to interrupt. But David, Mr. Chen, the market research shows what young consumers respond to on social media, I continued smoothly. It doesn't address what Pacific Industries needs. A marketing partner who understands that your customers value stability, proven reliability, and long-term relationship building. David nodded approvingly. Please continue, Robert. Furthermore, I said, consulting my notes, the proposal's dismissal of traditional approaches suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of your client base. Pacific Industries customers aren't looking for viral engagement. They're looking for trustworthy partners who will still be here in 10 years. The presentation devolved quickly after that. Marcus's carefully rehearsed talking points sounded increasingly desperate as David Chen's questions exposed the shallow thinking behind the flashy graphics. His young associates fidgeted uncomfortably, realizing they were witnessing their boss's professional humiliation in real time. Well, David said finally, closing his notebook with decisive finality, I think we have enough information to make our assessment. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. Marcus remained seated as his team gathered their materials, his face pale and drawn. David, perhaps we could discuss modifications to our approach, refinements that might better align with your preferences. Marcus, I said gently, I think David has heard enough contemporary engagement methodology for one morning. The elevator ride down felt like a funeral march. Marcus's team departed quickly, citing urgent calls and prior appointments, leaving him alone in the lobby with me as I prepared to return to David Chen's office for our post-presentation consultation. Robert, Marcus said, his voice carrying a desperation I'd never heard before. We need to talk. Please. I paused, studying the man who had fired me 24 hours earlier with such casual cruelty. Of course, Marcus. What would you like to discuss? This Pacific Industries contract, it's worth $2.3 million annually. Our biggest potential client. The quarterly projections, the board expectations. He ran his hands through his hair, his perfect corporate composure completely shattered. If we lose this, if the other clients hear that Pacific Industries rejected our proposal, that would be problematic for someone who just restructured the company to make room for fresh blood. I agreed. Marcus looked directly at me for the first time since recognizing me in the conference room. You knew, didn't you? Yesterday, when I fired you, you already knew about this consulting position. Actually, David offered me the position 3 weeks ago. Yesterday's termination simply eliminated any potential conflict of interest in assessing Pinnacle's proposal objectively. The irony hit him like a physical blow. His cost-cutting measure had inadvertently created the perfect conditions for his own destruction. Robert, please. I made a mistake. The fresh blood approach, the restructuring, I can reverse all of it. Your job, your office. Full restoration with a promotion and salary increase. I leaned against the lobby's marble wall, considering his offer with the detached interest of someone watching an interesting but irrelevant business case study. That's very generous, Marcus. But I'm curious. What changed your mind about the value of traditional approaches and experienced talent? You were right about David Chen. About relationship building, about understanding client values instead of just pushing trendy strategies. I should have listened to your experience instead of dismissing it. Should have. Yes, you should have. 28 years of institutional knowledge, client relationships I built personally, strategic insights that could have prevented this morning's disaster. Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Name your terms. Whatever you want, your old position, department head, partnership track, equity sharing. Just help me salvage this situation with Pacific Industries. I stood up straight, adjusting my suit jacket with the calm precision of someone who had already decided exactly how this conversation would end. Marcus, yesterday you told me it was time to make room for fresh blood. You said my traditional approach was outdated, that younger team members could better handle client relationships I'd spent decades building. I was wrong. Completely wrong. Yes, you were. And now you're asking me to fix the consequences of that wrongness using exactly the traditional approaches you dismissed as worthless. The lobby filled with the sound of Marcus's rapid breathing as the full magnitude of his situation became clear. He had fired the one person who could have prevented his disaster and was now begging that same person to clean up the mess. What do you want from me? Marcus asked desperately. Public apology. Admission that I mishandled your termination? Full acknowledgement that experience matters more than age demographics. I considered his offer for a moment, then shook my head slowly. Marcus, what I want is for you to learn something from this experience. Companies that discard experienced talent in favor of fresh blood often discover that experience and wisdom aren't outdated. They're irreplaceable. I walked toward the elevator, leaving Marcus standing alone in the lobby of the building where his biggest client had just witnessed his professional humiliation. Robert, wait, he called desperately. Please don't let this end like this. The company needs you. I need you. I paused at the elevator doors, turning back to face the man who had destroyed his own career through arrogance and short-sighted thinking. Marcus, 24 hours ago you needed fresh blood instead of old-fashioned wisdom. Today, you need old-fashioned wisdom instead of fresh blood. Tomorrow, you'll need a new job instead of either one. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. Through the closing gap, I could see Marcus standing motionless in the lobby, finally understanding the difference between modern management techniques and actual leadership. David Chen was waiting in his office when I returned, a bottle of good whiskey and 2 glasses on his desk alongside the contract that would formalize Pacific Industries' rejection of Pinnacle's proposal. Well, he said, pouring 2 fingers of amber liquid into each glass. That was even more illuminating than I expected. Your former colleague seemed surprised by the situation. I accepted the glass, settling into what had already begun to feel like my regular chair. Marcus believed that firing experienced employees would eliminate overhead costs and bring in contemporary thinking. He didn't consider that experience and institutional knowledge might be assets rather than liabilities. His loss is our gain, David said, raising his glass. To traditional values and proven approaches. We drank to the irony of a situation where being fired for being outdated had led directly to a more lucrative position evaluating other companies for the same outdated qualities. I have a proposition, David continued, opening a new folder on his desk. Pacific Industries is expanding our marketing partnerships division. We need someone to lead the initiative, evaluating potential agencies, managing existing relationships, providing strategic guidance on partnership compatibility. The job description was everything Marcus had claimed was outdated. Relationship building, strategic partnership development, long-term thinking, and proven experience valued over trendy approaches. The position pays significantly more than traditional marketing director roles, David added. Because we're not looking for traditional marketing directors. We're looking for someone who understands the difference between flashy campaigns and sustainable business growth. I thought about Marcus, probably still standing in the lobby below, trying to figure out how to explain to his board of directors that their biggest potential client had just rejected their proposal because it was too modern and contemporary. I'd be honored to lead that initiative, I said, shaking David's extended hand. My phone buzzed with another text from Marcus. Robert, please call me. Emergency board meeting tomorrow. They want explanations about Pacific Industries. I need help. I deleted the message without responding. Marcus had wanted fresh blood instead of traditional wisdom. Tomorrow, he would get all the fresh blood he could handle when the board replaced him with someone who understood the value of experience. Sandra was waiting when I got home that evening, her face bright with curiosity about how the morning had unfolded. So, she said, settling beside me on our couch, how did Marcus enjoy discovering that his outdated, traditional former employee was now his potential client's most trusted advisor? I told her about the presentation disaster, Marcus's desperate plea for help, and David Chen's offer of a position that paid substantially more than my pinnacle salary while requiring exactly the skills Marcus had declared worthless. Perfect justice, Sandra said with deep satisfaction. He fired you for being too experienced and traditional, then immediately needed exactly that experience and traditional approach to save his career. The evening news played in the background, but I wasn't really listening. Instead, I was thinking about something David Chen had said during our first conversation. Companies that value fresh blood over proven wisdom usually discover that wisdom isn't fresh, it's timeless. Marcus had learned that lesson too late to save his career, but perhaps other managers would learn it in time to save theirs. Experience isn't outdated just because it's accumulated over decades. Wisdom isn't worthless just because it comes from people over 50. Sometimes the best revenge for being underestimated is simply letting people discover how badly they need what they thought they didn't want. My phone rang one final time that evening. Marcus, of course, but I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to his message. Robert, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need you to understand something. I made the biggest mistake of my career when I fired you. Not just because of the Pacific Industries disaster, but because I threw away 28 years of wisdom and experience like it was garbage. I was wrong about fresh blood, wrong about traditional approaches, wrong about the value of experience. If there's any way to fix this, any way to make things right, please call me back. I deleted the message and turned off the phone. Some mistakes are too expensive to fix, and some lessons can only be learned through consequences. Tomorrow, I would start my new position as Pacific Industries Director of Strategic Partnerships, leading an initiative that valued exactly the qualities Marcus had dismissed as outdated. And Marcus would start looking for a new job, having learned the hard way that fresh blood means nothing without the wisdom to guide it effectively. The sweet revenge wasn't in his begging or his career destruction. The sweet revenge was in being valued, respected, and well compensated for the very qualities he had used to justify discarding me. Sometimes the best way to prove your worth is to let people discover what they've lost when they thought they were getting rid of dead weight. At 50 years old, I had learned something Marcus might never understand. Experience isn't outdated. It's priceless. And the companies smart enough to recognize that fact are the ones that build sustainable success while their competitors chase trending strategies toward inevitable failure. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.